Hi, I'm Nina Kelly. I'm the CEO of Safe New Futures.
So, Nina, why is ambiguous loss important and to whom is it important to?
And yes, ambiguous loss is important to so many people who have experienced it. And that could mean the psychological absence of a person, but still you've got their physical presence. So that's, for example, when a loved one suffers with addiction or Alzheimer's disease or mental illness. And in these cases, your loved ones are still alive, but they're estranged through brain injuries, dementia, personality changing circumstances, or perhaps just estranged and not speaking to you. And that leaves you grief stricken and mourning the loss of the relationship. But, it could also be the physical absence of a loved one who is missing, for example, lost in natural disasters or human displacement, missing in action, or otherwise presumed dead. How can you forget or give up hope, albeit momentarily, of finding that person again? Perhaps a precious person, the mother who gave you birth, a father whose life you lit up and he yours. And actually, that was my experience when, aged 8, both my parents disappeared following a fire. Yet their remains were never found. And, you can never give up hope that people you love and you need most in the world won't magically turn up one day. Ambiguous loss prevents individuals from experiencing conventional forms of closure and mourning. According to Pauline Boss, who coined the term in the 1970s, it is the most distressful of losses and a traumatic relational rupture that removes opportunities for closure and resolution. And so without closure, the sadness, confusion, and hopelessness, which is a part of the normally transient state of grief, stays frozen in time, crippling the mourner from moving on. What kind of daughter, son, brother, mother, friend, or partner forgets or gives up on a loved one? It feels like it's those people without a heart who choose not to feel, who pretend that it was just a thing that happens to lots of people, or perhaps a kind of person who can't or won't make a fuss because survival suddenly becomes an imperative rather than a given. And so to survive, we move on, we suppress, we create an outwardly acceptable narrative. But there is a safe way to move on, to move forward, to heal, to integrate our loss and become whole again.
What is your personal experience with ambiguous loss, Nina?
Yeah, for me, it's been a lifetime journey in living with and growing through and overcoming personal loss. And I'm keen to share my findings that I've also put into practice. The solutions are rooted in various forms of psychology, spirituality, and inner understanding. And having spent a lifetime learning how to navigate this journey through some trial and error, I can now move on positively and have discovered how to deal with, live with, and embrace the conundrum of existing with ambiguous loss. My experience is that one day my parents were off to a meal, as they often were. They were due to be back the next day before Christmas Eve to prepare for an extended family Christmas. And then 1 year later, they still hadn't returned, and I was told they were never coming back. No bodies had been found, so there could be no funeral, no burial, no cremation, and with still some hope that they might actually turn up one day, there was no memorial. As an adult, I've tried so many ways to say goodbye to them. In 2018, I learned to sing and perform the song in Italian, Conte Partiro, more commonly known as Time to Say Goodbye, during which I was, of course, beyond nervous. But then I plucked up even more courage and participated in a Blue Christmas church service on the anniversary of their disappearance on the 22nd of December 2019, during which I lit candles for them and tried to lay their memory to rest. Then I tried counselling to find closure, but I came home so distraught and upset that I couldn't work for the rest of the day. And I woke up with night terrors, for example, convinced my son had died even after I was awake for some time. And I actually had found myself re-traumatized all over again with no relief or resolve. And it was like I was reliving the whole thing again in the present day. So I started organising a memorial and buying a grave plot on the 50th anniversary of my parents' disappearance in 2020 and went to visit my brother in Spain to enlist his help. But actually, our efforts were thwarted by the COVID pandemic lockdowns, which halted all our efforts to say goodbye. However, horribly, and wonderfully, this isolating, lonely time turned out to be my crucible of transformation and smelting beautiful gold, actually, from what appeared to be a hard, shapeless rock. And so something new started to happen. And that led me to realize that ambiguous loss needs to be dealt with very differently from ordinary loss. It was trial and error. But now that I've done the research, I was unwittingly putting into practice much of what I realize now is actually perceived and evidenced wisdom.
And what would you say are your solutions to ambiguous loss?
Solutions, yeah. Firstly, look back and be grateful for the good times. Things like gratitude journals, being thankful for what is in your life and in your day, are tried and tested ways of moving forward positively. And it's something actually that I have practiced for decades. But being thankful for the past was a whole new challenge for me. I dug out photos, I got them copied and carefully put them in photograph frames. I started to consciously be grateful for who my parents were and the influence they had in my life. That, I was loved and delighted in and cared about for the first 8 years of my life. Now, I know not everybody has that experience, but it was a beautiful thing for me to hang on to. Secondly, seek help. EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing, and hypnotherapy are non-talking therapies that help piece together fragmented and traumatized memories that we struggle to put into words. And this is not surprising. Broca's area, the speech center of the brain, closes down during trauma and then effectively goes offline whenever a trauma flashback is triggered. For example, during talking therapies. The other area of the brain that deactivates during trauma is the left side that organizes logical sequences and translates our shifting perceptions into words. Instead, the right brain goes into overdrive, acts as if the traumatic event is happening in the present, and it can induce fury, terror, rage, shame, or freezing. And that is why non-talking interventions are so immensely helpful and allow us to reprocess confused and chaotic memories in a coherent and manageable way. These therapies enable me to learn to love myself and use movement, for example, during yoga and dance and sports to release the tension and the trauma that I'd held within for so long. In fact, the more complex reality is that my parents disappeared, burned to death, but not dead, as one newspaper article said. Alive somewhere on this earth, more likely in another place, another universe. But now I no longer need to explain why I don't have parents like everyone else seems to. So I wrote my truth in an autobiography and made copies for all 3 of my children and grandson, which I hope to give them before I pass on. Others might prefer to talk or draw their truth. Once the truth is out there, exposed and naked, it loses so much of its hold on us, and we find that the truth has the power to set us free.
And to end, Nina, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Yes, final words of wisdom. Build a tolerance for ambiguity. Accept that sometimes there are things you cannot accept. Look for your loved ones in places where you can find them and not where you can't. And actually, I started to look inside myself. I have my mother's eyes, for example, her strength of personality, her commitment to wider family and relationships. I have my father's chin, for better or worse, his flair for business, languages and writing, and his love of life. I look at my 3 children, the eldest, strong and determined, so unwilling to be boxed and moulded, and a pillar of support for his family. My second son, so compassionate, who lives his life to help those he loves and those he doesn't even know to make a difference in the world. And my hilarious, sensitive, conscientious daughter who brings joy to so many. My parents live on through me, through my children, through my brother's children, through my nieces and nephews who are courageous and compassionate beyond measure, and through their children. The circle of life is a reality and not just a cliche. So instead of just mourning our loss forever with frozen grief, confusion, or anger, and unable to find closure, we can find new ways to reinterpret our relationship with our lost loved ones. We don't need to make a time to say goodbye, because that is not possible without a real person or body to say goodbye to. But we can look back with gratitude, seek appropriate therapies, find the courage to tell the truth, and build a tolerance for ambiguity. Thank you for sharing this journey with me, and I wish you all the best as you continue your journey. Thank you.